joining us for our continuing live coverage on Hurricane Hanna. I'm Chief Meteorologist Leslie Hudson, joining Stefanie Lauber on our ongoing coverage of Hanna, which made landfall 6 p.m. Just about local time, just right around Padre Island. And it's made a second landfall in Kennedy County that was within this last hour at 7:15 Central Time, 8:15 Eastern. And we want to let you know that there's still plenty of Hanna to go around. So we're going to be talking about the wind, the rain, and the surge that's been a big problem. We've already know that there's been damage reported along the parts of southeastern coastline of Texas, and the concern will be as we wear on to tonight and through the overnight how that all plays out. So we've got our radar up, and Damien, if you want to take this full screen, Damien McFarland is manning the helms. He is the magic man tonight. We're going to take a little closer look what's going on. So you can see the eye very well defined here, and I just before we came on, I did a little rudimentary measuring here, and this eye itself is huge. We've been talking about this, roughly 40 miles across, you guys. So that's a big chunk of real estate that's been impacted and continues to deal with this system. But currently, of course, if you're in that eye, and a lot of folks don't live where this particular eye is from this hurricane, which is good news. But there's definitely some folks that are interacting with this eye. I'm sure we'll see some of the pictures on social media, but it's fascinating to see just how large this is and how much more of Hanna there is to go around. So I'm going to zoom way in here because we talk a lot about these feeder bands this time of the year when we're talking about tropical cyclones. And you can see this really impressive band that's been going around the outer eye wall and continues to will continue to rotate in as we get into tonight. So folks that are currently dealing with Hanna over to the north, you're going to get the opposing winds here within this next probably 2 hours or less. The winds will be shifting directions, and that's going to be an interesting scenario for folks that if there are folks down here, I'm sure there's storm chasers down here trying to get some video for sure. Let me go ahead and put on the velocity mode because we were just looking at this as well. There's been several reports of damage in the Port Mansfield area from our strong hurricane. Even though this is a Category 1, the winds still sustained at 90 miles an hour. So when we take a look at this, we're looking for what are called couplets, and that's where we see some type of little rotation. In particular, I'm not seeing any tight couplets, but we are seeing some of this. Hang on, let me grab my pointer. Whoops, I think there we go. There it is. So we are definitely seeing some intense winds, you guys, in and around this particular band of rain with the outer bands of Hanna. So as we head into the next several minutes, we'll see how that rotates on. There have been some tornado warnings issued. That's pretty common when we get a landfalling tropical system, whether it be a tropical storm or, of course, in this case, a hurricane. It's interesting to see how the friction interacts with these cyclones and how we can sometimes get these brief spin-ups of tornadoes. So we'll see how that plays out in the next couple of hours or two as well. Let me go ahead and drag this up. I want to go down here real quick. So here's Brownsville, and sometimes we can see, like, here's an example. It's not a really good one, but right here, not really what I would call a great couplet, but you can see the green inside the red, which would indicate that we've got winds in opposing directions. But that's not a great example of it. But let me drag this up the coastline and see if we see anything interesting. I know I looked at this before we came on, and I didn't see anything interesting yet. But I know there has been some tornado warnings issued from the National Weather Service, and we're going to go ahead and go back up here. I believe, yep, I've got Houston's radar. I believe this is toggled on. Let me zoom out real quick. And so far, not seeing anything in terms of severe weather, but I know the winds here in this core wind field are still reporting near 90 miles an hour. Some of the buoys offshore have been gusting much higher than that. So there is definitely going to be some more damage, I would suspect, in this area. Hopefully not too many people are there. Hopefully the storm chasers are being safe and are hunkered down while they deal with this system. There's so many weather events that go on with a landfalling hurricane. So many people are focused a lot of times on the actual wind, but there's, as we've talked about, storm surge, there's flooding events. Many chunks of southern Texas are under a flash flood watch. Some areas flash flood warning as well. So as we head into tonight, that potential there for 7 to 9 inches in some of those pockets. Not everywhere in southern Texas is going to get 9 inches of rain, but there are definitely going to be some of these pockets. And when you look here, I'm going to zoom back in. And when you look at these bands where you see those magentas and those purple coloring, those are some heavy, heavy, heavy rain bands that are moving onshore that are packing not only heavy rain, but they're also packing wind. So again, this will be one that we're going to watch, and it's going to rotate up and around. And it's these areas on the backside that are also going to get some of this nasty weather. Looks like we've got a flood warning here just north of Brownsville. And that one, too, is going to be probably a scenario that we'll see playing out as we head through tonight and tomorrow. Because remember, once the entire center gets on shore, Hanna's still going to have to weaken, but still can dump copious amounts of rain as it moves towards the south into Mexico, where, of course, mudslides will become a big problem in the coming days. So here's a look at the current winds. These are the current sustained gusts. So several areas, and it looks like we've got some that are around 50 miles an hour. Brownsville about 39, 40. It looks like in parts of Kingsville, Corpus Christi 42. Up in Galveston, Galveston actually kind of got off, fortunately, without too much of Hanna, but I know they've had some pretty rough weather there earlier in the day today. The winds there, the gusting around 23. So expect to see these type of winds at least for the next several hours. And again, we talk about the wind factor, even though we're not talking about high winds. When you're talking about a constant wind, 50, 60 miles an hour, that is definitely enough to start knocking tree branches down. And when they get onto power lines, we're talking about power outages. Now, I know there's power outages already there along the intercoastal and right along the immediate coastline of southern Texas. But when we're talking inland areas, we're still talking winds 50, 60 miles an hour for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. That is definitely enough to start causing some damage with some of these weaker root systems and some of the trees down there. So I know we're going to see and hear more power outages as we get in time. We'll see how that all plays out. And actually, Damien, I forgot to show our video off the top. Let me show you some video that we have out of Galveston. This was from earlier in the day today, early in the forecast along the beaches. Of course, all the beaches were closed from Hanna. And as you can see here, this was right when that storm surge was starting to come on shore. So in the Galveston area, the storm surge was probably around 2 to 4 feet. Baffin Bay is really where the worst of that surge came in. The estimates 4 to 6 feet with that particular area, but you can see, the surge there coming on shore. This was around noon or 1 o'clock from earlier today that we saw this. And then actually we'll go ahead and show the Corpus Christi one as well. Corpus Christi also seeing a surge, probably in the neighborhood of 2 to 4 feet. Don't see that here, but you can see of course, the angry seas and the ominous skies there as we were continuing to wait on Hanna, our first landfalling hurricane of the Atlantic season in the lower 48. We've, of course, been watching Douglas out in the Pacific as well, but this is our first landfalling hurricane of the hurricane season in the lower 48 for the Atlantic Basin. All right, there's a look at the infrared, and we talk an awful lot about thunderstorms and cloud tops and how high these storms are. The magenta there, as you notice in the beginning of that loop, a lot of those kind of clustered just off the coast there on the eastern eye wall there of Hanna. But as it interacted with land, we see that shrink down, the pink, the magenta, which are the coldest and the highest cloud tops, shrink down to just a small area there. But we're still talking 50, 60,000 feet in the atmosphere. And we still have, and there's a huge chunk of geography, by the way. Let me pull this out a second, because you can see that even the outflow from Hanna goes all the way out here. Some of that feathering you see, that's kind of like the exhaust from the engine we talk about when we're trying to explain what these things are. These are like these big engines that just inhale all this energy from the Gulf of Mexico. But look at that outflow going on in the winds carrying some of these clouds aloft all the way over to even the Florida Panhandle. So there's been a fair amount of areas that have been impacted by Hanna indirectly, and then of course directly Texas getting the brunt of it. We did see these hurricane warnings change at 5 o'clock, so that now extends a little further south into Mexico. You can see the area with that tropical storm warning. Still have that hurricane warning up for the Baffin Bay area. That will stay up through the next several hours, and then a tropical storm warning north of that up to Port Lavaca through the next several hours as well. And this is our composite of visible and infrared. I like to show this one because, again, you can see some of that puckering or that texturing of some of those higher cloud tops, and I got to put my glasses on so I can see what I'm doing here. But some of those are right in here. You can see some really, really high cloud tops right here. A really nasty line of weather here. We've even got some further offshore as well. So over the next several hours, we'll be dealing with this area of the coastline of Texas will be getting some pretty rough weather. I'm going to show you one more thing, and then I'm going to hand things off to meteorologist Stefanie Lauber, but we'll talk about the storm surge warning real quickly. As I mentioned, it's been anywhere from 2 to 6 feet. Definitely when you're talking about a 6-foot storm surge, that is a life-threatening situation. I hope folks that were under that storm surge warning and were issued to evacuate did. I know most of the evacuations were mandatory. I know the local officials there make that a call on an individual basis, but remember, we talked about this yesterday, it only takes about 18 inches of water to loft or lift up a small cart and to get it moving in a storm surge and get it moving in a wall of water. So in this area, it is extremely dangerous to stay where you are if you're under a storm surge warning and you're told to leave. This, of course, is generally worse up on the northern side. So we definitely saw some of the worst surge, as I mentioned, near the Baffin Bay area. But as we head into tonight, that will start to improve. But we're still talking about this for the surge warning lasting at least through the next several hours. All right, I'm going to hand things over to Stefanie Lauber, and she's going to give you the rest of the update on Hanna and what you can expect for the rest of the forecast as well.
All right, thanks, Leslie. And boy, guys, this is a great time to have your MyRadar app handy because you can track all of this right there in your app, get all the radar updates there. And I'm sure if you guys had your location settings on, you live on the coastline here, you've been getting these updates as they've developed throughout the day with all these hurricane warnings, flash flood warnings and watches. So very handy to have that in addition to a NOAA weather radio when you're under an rapidly intensifying storm like this. And this has been an incredible season so far, already on our 8th named storm, about 2 months ahead of the average time for these storms. And it's causing scenes like this. If we take our live Surfline cameras out at Corpus Christi, you can see things very, very turbulent in the Gulf of Mexico there. Things just churning up. The camera has been blurry all day because we've just had storm after storm blowing through, and that very strong onshore wind has not only made it difficult to see what's going out there from this perspective, but if you are in the downtown Corpus Christi area, I hope you're hunkered down because flooding has been a big problem there, especially on the main drag. The bridge that goes out to Padre Island has just been a mess. Turn around, don't drown. If you haven't learned by now, I'm sure today is not the day to try it out because it's just been so problematic with this storm moving through. I want to show you some of the rainfall totals that are expected as Hanna makes its way going on through the next 24 hours, the next 48 hours. We're about to see a lot of rainfall here along the coastal bend of Texas. We've already seen about an inch in Corpus Christi recorded at the airport over the past 24 hours, and really less than that because it's been from last night into today that we got about a ½ inch last night, another ½ inch with the storms that have rolled through today, and then down in Brownsville we've had about a ¼ inch reported in just 3 hours. And again, most of that was in the past too, that half of that period of time, seeing the bulk of the rain. And we haven't even gotten to the second half of the storm yet. You'll hear the second landfall being that the storm has gone over the barrier island, Padre Island, the largest barrier island in the world, doing a great job trying to protect the inland folks here. But you know, we've seen it cross the intercoastal and make its way into Kennedy County there. Thankfully, it's a fairly rural area, but unfortunately, Texas dealing with those droughts every summer. This is what's going to help bring some relief for that drought. Unfortunately, it's a whole bunch of rain in a short amount of time. So these darker shades of orange into the pinks and purples, that's where we expect to see the most rainfall. So that's going to be in the Rio Grande Valley, folks down in Brownsville, McAllen, going to see the bulk of the rain because of the path that Hanna will be taking. But notice this also goes up the coastline towards the Louisiana-Texas border. Somebody asked about Galveston earlier, getting a very strong rain band moving through there pretty recently, and that's going to dump a heavy amount of rain even into the Brazos Valley, back towards the hill country. San Antonio getting some rain here just a little while ago, and it's not as torrential as the rain happening out at the coastline, but still significant and will help chip away at some of the drought issues that Texans deal with every summer. So before it's all said and done, folks in the Rio Grande Valley could see in the neighborhood between 7 and 9 inches of rain between today going into the next 2 days as what's left of Hanna begins to meet the mountains there in Mexico and deteriorate. that water from the Gulf of Mexico is in this storm, and it's got to go somewhere. So it's going to rain down on parts of northern Mexico and southern Texas. And some of this may actually make it out towards some of the desert areas of Texas going into the next couple of days. So if we time out for you the track, this is one model that takes us into the future with the radar for Hanna here. So again, the reds showing you the heavier, more intense rainfall as we go on through the rest of tonight, and the storm continues moving inland. We do expect to see those bands continue to spin counterclockwise outward. So some of those rain bands making it up towards Galveston Bay through Houston, parts of Louisiana will get the rain. Even into North Texas, Oklahoma, and Arkansas could get some moisture from this, triggering storms. Of course, not nearly as intense as those who will be closer to Hanna's circulation, but the remnants will definitely have far-reaching effects as we go on through the next 24 hours. So by 10 p.m. tonight, we begin to see a little less organization with Hanna's circulation. Those storms expand outward, so the rain coverage increases outwards, and we get some of that going back towards the western side of the Horn there, as I call the southern part of Texas. That goes far-reaching into northern Mexico, and by the time it's all said and done with the weekend, we are still seeing some potential for rain going on in the Rio Grande Valley, even as far into Monday. So folks, we've got a couple more hours to go with the heavy, intense stuff, but we'll continue to see the remnant effects of Hurricane Hanna and the remnants when it's no longer a hurricane going on into the next several hours, and certainly the end of this weekend. So a pretty impressive storm for our first landfalling hurricane in the Atlantic Basin. Again, well ahead of its average, and definitely packing a punch here for folks on the coast. If you've been in this part of Texas for a long time, you're probably getting memories back to the 90s or early 2000s of Claudette, when that moved through near Rockport, Texas, just yesteryear. And folks near here haven't seen anything of such magnitude except for Harvey back in 2017, and many places near the Corpus Christi area northwards still dealing with rebuilding since Harvey moved on through. Thankfully, not anywhere near this intensity, but we did hear about some damage to the pier out there in Corpus Christi causing trouble. So we'll have to do some reparations out here before it's all said and done. Port Mansfield seeing some structural damage with the first side of the eye wall that came through, and now with this more intense side that'll be rolling through, unfortunately we could see some more of that. The flooding doesn't make cleanup any easier, but we will get through this, and we are about halfway done. So that is the great news there. I want to take you to some footage from our Surfline camera out in Matagorda. This is a little bit further to the north, and camera view has been a bit better there, and we've actually had a slight, if you can call that sunshine, we've had some light coming on through there as the eye walls passed over. You get a clearing in the clouds somewhat, and that kind of improves conditions for a bit. And it's often misleading for folks because back in the day, before we knew so much about hurricanes, of course, they didn't know there was a second half coming. And even still today, people who aren't mindful of that tend to be fooled, and it can be dangerous. People think, oh, okay, the worst part is over. This second half will be better, and almost always that is the opposite of what is true. But anyways, we will see conditions continue to be somewhat calm there until the second half of the eye wall comes through, and then I'll show you the overall path that Hanna's expected to take as we head into the end of the weekend. If you didn't see it already there on the future radar, here's the official forecast track from the National Hurricane Center as Hanna has made its way approaching the coastal bend of Texas. With it, you can see the infrared, those bright colors showing you the rapid intensification as it approached land. Very much a last-minute effort to try to intensify. Became a hurricane, and 90 miles an hour, folks. It's very close to Category 2, which begins at 95 miles per hour. There isn't a whole bunch of difference when you're talking about winds that strong, but, the impacts are definitely felt here across the entire coast of Texas. This will continue on a southwesterly path going on into the next couple of days, degrading and then moving into Mexico. But I want to take you back to this storm surge graphic that Leslie showed earlier. So something to keep in mind, that storm's counterclockwise motion with this storm, definitely pushing those Gulf of Mexico waters in. So of course we had flooding in Baffin Bay into Corpus Christi, Rockport Bay, Port Lavaca, Port A, seeing the flooding concerns and the surge as those waters are quite literally pushed in by the strong winds. So definitely an issue to contend with there. And let's see if I can take you back to our radar once again, get a check on some of those rain bands that were moving through the northern part of the Texas coastline there. Just a minute as this queues up here. Yeah, we're seeing another band going through Galveston Bay right now in Houston. So this is as far reaching as up towards the Arklatex, where we've had some rain there. But zooming in a little closer on this band that is in the Houston metro area, some very intense rainfall with these brighter shades of red and yellow. And this line, it's packing some wind there. Not tropical storm strength or anything like that. This area is not under any warnings or advisories, but definitely tropical downpours, which could lead to some flooding concerns in this part as well, because we're dealing with the drought. So we'll continue to see these bands push off and break away from the center circulation of the storm going on into today. But as we continue to move a little bit closer to the center of the storm, going down the coastline here, Fort Lavaca getting another band that'll be moving in here over the next couple of minutes. I say by the bottom of the hour, we'll see some more rainfall moving in there, getting a little bit of a break. Corpus Christi about to get another strong band rolling on into the bay there. So we'll get more rain here. We won't see the end of it, but we will get intermittent breaks as these bands continue to branch out from the center of circulation, and from that we'll begin to see the intermittent rain become more spread apart, and eventually, as Hanna continues to weaken into remnants, we'll see a lot of that taper off. But it's impressive how much energy is involved with these tropical systems, especially what happens, as Leslie mentioned, when they make landfall, meet the friction of land, and really disrupts that circulation. This one, we've seen the eye kind of try to wobble into a more symmetrical circular look there, but definitely breaking apart. But it's notable that these more intense showers wrapping around into the storm here have maintained that eastern eye wall that will be making its way onto the Padre Island National Seashore here into the coming remainder of the hour here. And eventually, as this pushes in, folks, things will continue to improve. We just got to deal with the second half of the storm, and that rain will begin to eventually taper down. We'll be dealing with the flooding for the next better part of this upcoming week, and then as that begins to recede, we'll see those drought conditions definitely improve from it, recharge the aquifer a bit, and not a bad way to break us into that hurricane prep, because we have a whole lot of hurricane season left. But thankful that this storm was not allowed the time to intensify into that Cat 2 and has made landfall. So things will be improving as we head on into the rest of the weekend with regards to this storm. Hanna, of course, we're still watching the tropics way out in the Atlantic. We have a system coming off the coast of Africa. Gonzalo is pretty much fizzled out. We'll meet its end here into the end of the weekend. And then out in the Pacific, we're tracking Hurricane Douglas. That's making its approach to the Hawaiian Islands here as we head into the later part of the weekend as well. We'll keep you updated on all of that. And of course, if you're not getting updates at the minute from us, you can always check on the app. The MyRadar app has radar that you can tinker around with and explore. And if you're really gung-ho and getting really nerdy in there, we have a Hurricane Pro version, a Hurricane Tracker add-on to our app that opens a whole bunch of tools that you can tinker around with these storms with if you're very interested in hurricanes. Of course, all the life-saving information is included in our apps. We were going live on our social media apps and keeping you ahead of the storm here at MyRadar. That's going to do it for us here. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll be back more updates as we head on through the rest of the weekend. Stay safe.